COFMUG, Central Ohio FileMaker Developers User Group. Although since we're online, we're taking the opportunity to share it with everybody that's not in Ohio. But it looks like a fair amount of our Ohio people showed up, so that's great to see all of you guys. We normally run the third Thursday of every month from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time, GMT -4. At least for the next probably 2 to 3 months, we're probably going to continue the online format. Our meeting space has reopened, but only for members only. So like guests can't access our building space right now. We meet at the largest maker space in the world, the Columbus Idea Foundry. It's an awesome workshop where you can have access to all the cool things like 3D printers and CNC machines, metal shops, welding, woodworking, but also a huge co-working space and a meeting space that we use. They've actually been cranking out a whole bunch of PPE equipment there at the Foundry during the last couple months with all of their manufacturing equipment. So it's been pretty busy there, even though they've been closed. So we're still going to meet online. Our online meetings are really kind of informal. We're trying to create the in-person user group experience online. So at any time, Chris has already said it's okay that if you want to unmute yourself during his presentation to ask a question, feel free to do so. If you pop something in the chat window, I'll unmute myself and raise your hand for you. So our timeline is normally 6 to 6:30 social time, or just chat and talk with each other. 6:30 to 8 p.m. is presentations. And then after 8 p.m., we all go out for a beer at our local bar, which is something we can't really do when we're not in person, but you're, of course, all invited to do that on your own. All right, so Chris, you have the floor.
All right, excellent. Well, first of all, I'm humbled by this opportunity. How's my audio, video coming in okay? Can you guys see my screen, all the fun stuff there?
Yep, looks great.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to put you guys over here. And first of all, thank you. I am truly humbled to be able to make connections, you know, with so many different FileMaker folks all over the place. Although now I'm somewhat disappointed that this wasn't an in-person event now that you just mentioned the makerspace that you usually meet in. That's pretty darn cool. But at the same time, it is lovely to be sitting here at my home and being able to still, you know, telecommute in for this. I'm really in a great group. I'm really impressed with the numbers that you guys have here. I wish we could get these kind of numbers at our Orange County, California group. Excited to talk about FileMaker 19 launch. And as mentioned already, please, I would love for this to be as thin on lecture format as possible. And I, like many of you, get sick of hearing my voice often. So please pipe in with comments, thoughts, musings. Anything is welcome. This is certainly set up in a kind of an informal style, meant to try to invoke dialogue and conversation. And by the way, hello to my friends whose familiar faces I see here. By the way, David, what time is it by you? That's the biggest question that I've got coming into this right now.
It's 8:30 a.m. It's tomorrow. And tomorrow will be a great day.
Then. Okay, great. Well, then you got more caffeine in your blood now than the rest of us do. So no excuses for yawning or anything like that. But delighted to see all of you guys. I'm really excited about this. And with full transparency, a lot of the demonstrations that I have set up for you guys today, not a lot of them, a good deal of them are videos that I had put together to make sure that all the moving parts were working. So forgive me, I will be scrubbing through some of the things like this first demonstration that I'm going to show you here. Not trying to pull a fast one by you guys, but in my advanced years, I find it more difficult to do the things on screen and talk and be compelling at the same time as I used to in my younger years. So I just want to make sure I get good stuff for you guys. And the topics that I'm looking forward to sharing with you, you'll see, first of all, I'm going to talk to you guys about CoreML and the new capabilities that have been introduced into the platform for us, and a little bit just on machine learning in general. And then I'm going to talk about other things like NFC support, Siri shortcuts, and I really look forward to talking about JavaScript support. both the new script steps and JavaScript function support that we've got, along with talking to you guys about add-ons. I look forward to being able to show you what to expect from add-ons that will ship with the product very soon, and then just kind of talk to you about in general what add-ons are, and frankly why I think they're a pretty big deal, like a game-changing release in 19 and beyond. So I look forward to jumping right into this stuff. Also, I have, and thank you, Mike, for resending all those. I have various different links that I wanted to share with you guys, just in general about some great resources that I've found regarding machine learning in general. So first of all, I'm going to walk you through an example of creating what's called an image classifier model, and I'll kind of frame up where that comes into play. That's what the first link is. It walks you through all the steps using a tool that I'll introduce you guys to called Create ML. And then also, probably the first thing to really discuss when it comes to machine learning is that machine learning is introduced into our applications or into any application environment through the creation of these things called models. That's probably the first piece of vernacular that you'll want to be familiar with. I'm going to show you how to create a model, and specifically how FileMaker support comes into two different types of models: vision models and general models. And I'm going to really walk you through the vision model, and that's this create image classifier model is one of those vision ones. You'll notice that this other link are models that are already created for you that I think are really interesting for you to explore. So if you want to play with some of these models and not have to build them yourself, you can go check out some of the ones that are available to you here on the CoreML models page on Apple, on Apple's page. Now that's not, by no means is it limited to just those resources. You can find information about CoreML models specifically in a lot of different locations. So first of all, a quick show of hands. I'm curious, who's experimented with machine learning in some way, shape, or form already, just out of pure curiosity? Excellent. Yeah, and then I don't have to see anybody's hands to say who's been affected by machine learning, because frankly, you'll probably be shocked if you found out how many different places machine learning already exists, whether it's in the form of AI or just in applications that you're creating already, or if it's those crazy little support bots that you're interacting with. And I dare say that some of you are maybe even interacting with machine learning potentially unknowingly right now as I'm talking even. So let's talk a little bit about what is supported in FileMaker first of all. So the first thing to hit here is, while we're talking about machine learning, we're talking about specifically CoreML, which is an Apple-supported version of machine learning. So the first thing is, apologies to those that want to deploy your solutions either in WebDirect or a browser or on Windows environments. You won't have support for CoreML if you're outside of Mac OS or on iOS. But those of you that are on Mac OS and those of you that want to actually run applications on your phones, great news. We've got extended support now for CoreML within our applications. And specifically within FileMaker, while it's not very limited, it's a great sort of MVP release of this. We're looking at two different areas: image analysis and general analysis. And that's where I talked before about vision models and general models. So imagine the image models are the concept of the whole hot dog, not hot dog. I find that more people than I realize have seen the show on HBO, Silicon Valley. And there's a whole storyline in there about an app that you can take a picture of something and determine whether it's a hot dog or not a hot dog. That is a great example and a very easy example to understand of vision models, or the image classifiers that I'm going to show you here in a second. Other ones which involve regression analysis against data are what fall under the general analysis. And I'll give you some examples of those and show you some of those as we go. So really what FileMaker needs to be able to support in order to be able to support CoreML is the ability to load a model, the ability to execute that model while it's loaded, and the ability to then unload a model. And the way that we get support for that in FileMaker 19 is through a new script step called Configure Machine Learning Model script step. That allows us to load and unload a model. And then we have a new calculation function called compute model calculation, which is a calculation function which can address models that have already been loaded into your session. So first, the concept of loading and unloading. To begin with, I'm going to show you examples of applications that have a single model installed or loaded. And that's not a limitation. You can have as many models loaded. As a matter of fact, there'll be a demo file that I'll show at the end here of this section that actually has multiple different models loaded, or multiple different models stored in the app. But in order for me to be able to access any one of them, I have to load it first. And if I want to load another one, I probably want to unload the one that was currently active. These all happen within your user session on Mac OS environments or iOS environments. And while those are loaded, they can be referenced by the compute calculation model function. I'll show you examples of these, but in general, and forgive me for these placeholder slides. This is just stuff I threw together for other designers to update, and I haven't got my update, so forgive me. But this is what this new configure machine learning model script step looks like. It simply says the parameters that it needs are the model name. This is a name that you're giving the model. So for example, in the hot dog, not hot dog, we might name it hot dog, for example. And that name is useful because when we get into the calculation function, the calculation function needs to know which of the pre-named models you have available to you. So the next decision that you want to make is which one of the operations you're going to be doing. Are you going to be doing vision, general, or unloading whichever of the two, vision and general, are already running in your session? And then lastly, you see the from field. That's going to be a container field that actually stores the model. And Mike, great note, by the way, partial server support for CoreML is available if you have your FileMaker server running on Mac OS. That's a great point, which I guess technically still is the Mac OS, but extended out to clients in that case too. Really important part there. Thank you for that. Part two, before I jump right into the demo, is just understanding the calculation function. Once a model has been loaded and it has been named, then the compute model calculation function can be run that it addresses the name. So in this case, we would say the name of this could be hot dog. And then there are different parameters, input parameters or specific values. But even by just, and I'll show you examples of those in the context of my demo. But what you get returned back when you're running the compute model calculation function is an array of JSON data. So if you look down here at the bottom of my screen, you'll see an example of an array of data. Now, what it's giving us back are really two different things, two different name value pairs, the classification and the confidence. And it's going to give us a row, so to speak, of each one of those in the return JSON for every classification that was defined in the model. I'll get into that in my example here in just a second. But the most important part is the order in which they're presented. The very top one, so you can just sort of grab the top value in this array if you'd want to, is the one that the model believes is the match, or in the case of a vision, it's whatever image you have, it thinks it has identified that. The confidence value is what percent confidence it has that that's the correct match. So when you see something like 0.99, it's the model is saying, I am 99% sure that this is a headlight socket doorman object that you just showed a picture of, for example. And so the idea is that your values, your confidence values, will all equal up to 1. So at any given time, it might think, well, I'm 0.004, percent, 0.04% sure that maybe this thing is a fuel filter, but I'm 99% sure that this thing is a headlight socket in that case. So that's really what that data means. So let's jump into an example of this. And there's a couple sections of the example. First of all, creating a model. Whether you use the models in the examples in the links that I shared with you, or if there's links that you found on your own elsewhere, or if you want to create your own, they all will work inside of FileMaker. But I'm going to show you how I used a tool that's called Create ML to create a model. And in my case, what I'm doing is using a vision. So this demo that I'm using is derivative from what those of you that went to FileMaker DevCon last year may have seen Robert Holsey do in the Visionary keynote, where he did taking a picture of a spark plug and it identified that it was a spark plug. This is that same demo, but I had to create my own model to kind of understand how this works. So in order to create the model, what I did was I created a couple folders worth of images. Now the folder structure is actually kind of important here. So first of all, you'll notice that I have two different folders. I have the testing folder and the training folder. Within those folders, I have subfolders. You'll notice in the example of the training one, there's a folder called Fuel Filter Micro, one that's called Headlight Socket Doorman, and so on. The names that I chose for those folders were significant because that's actually the values that I'm going to see as my classification that's returned. So the model is saying, okay, anything that looks like something that I see in the pictures in this folder, we're going to classify it as whatever the folder name is. And it goes through all the different folder structure there. And all I put inside these folders were just pictures. I went and bought some of the same objects that were in the demo. And I took 50 pictures of each one of them. That seemed to be the sweet spot for taking photos. So I took 30 of those photos and I put it into the subfolder. So I took 30 of each. So I took 30 of the field filter micros and I put them into the testing folder. And then I took 20 of those 50 that I took and put them into the training, or I'm sorry, vice versa. 30 in the training, 20 in the testing. And the idea is I just wanted to have a mixture of these so that the model was learning using certain images. And then I wanted to test it using a different set of images. So it wasn't the same image that was being used to create the model. And then I put those all into subfolders. So the idea here is while I've only focused on, I think, 4 of these products, if you have an inventory of 100 different products that you want to have use a vision model for, you'll need to go create subfolders for each one of those 100, name them accordingly. And what I did is I actually named it the human readable name as well as the product ID inside the application. So that way I can actually parse out either one of those values depending on what it is that I'm using inside my FileMaker scripts. But you'd have to do that for 100 of them, and then you want to create a model. So let's look at how I create the model. So first of all, after I've taken all the photos and put them in here, I throw them onto my Mac, and I'm using a version of Xcode. Specifically, I'll have to show you Xcode 11.3.1 or higher, which requires Catalina 10.15 or higher, and I believe Xcode is now on to 11.4 and higher. The reason that you need that specific version of Xcode is because when you then open it up and you go under the Xcode menu, you'll go under Open Developer Tool, and you'll see this tool called CreateML. And CreateML is this great tool that has templates in here, for example, for image classifiers, which is exactly what we're doing. And I just open it up. I choose the image classifier template. I will name it whatever my project name is going to be. This is just not the name of your model, but the actual name of the project. And that way I can open up this project again later and maybe retrain the model, and I'll put another version of the model if I want to. So now I hit create, and it takes me to this view. This is really super easy to do. You'll notice on the left-hand side in the middle, it says training data. You guessed it, that's where I select the folder full of the training data and hit open. And then over on the testing data side, I hit select files and I hit testing. And really, that's it. After that point, well, you see it identified 3 different classes. Those are the 3 different subfolders that are in the testing folders. And so that is appropriate. I've got 3 of them. Now simply all I do is hit the play button to let the training begin. So Mike, your question for the different images in the training, the difference between each picture, it's a great point. I actually moved them. I did different, different aspect ratios. I did some from the top, from the bottom, from the side, from different angles. I experimented with a little bit, and I found that the more unique angles I get, the better the model accuracy I'm provided. So, and different lighting, I found that I wasn't actually getting, I really had to have good lighting for my photos for all of them to be meaningful for the training, actually. So I don't know so much if having a bad lighting model is going to make it recognize something in bad lighting so much as it might just not have a high enough confidence value that that's the thing in the first place. So good questions there.
I asked that, there was a conversation on Facebook earlier, and it looks like a lot of people are trying to do facial recognition, which I know if you're training models for facial recognition, you want to take like straight on photos, but also slightly like tilted out to 45 degrees in each direction.
Yep.
And, like looking down and looking up, similar to what Apple has you do when you train your Face ID.
And that is exactly what's happening. Is for those of you that have not worked with machine learning, you've at least trained a model with your face to recognize it. And speaking to your point there, Mike, it's like, how many different angles of the face do you need? Well, it depends on the form factor that's running the app that's going to use the model. Like if this thing will never see the back of your head, well, then don't worry about that, right? I mean, it's a little wacky of an example, but that's the idea behind it. So yeah, in my case, I just took like, and by the way, there's cameras and services you can send for doing, modeling, if that's something you don't want to do yourself. So I was trying to emulate it any way that I could by getting all those different values. Morgan says, can we train and refine the model from within FileMaker, giving users the way? Well, let me stop you right there. while we don't have it yet, and I would not be shocked, honestly, if we saw it in the next year or something like that, and I'm just speculating, I don't have any information there, but it is clear to me that Claris engineering understands the need for it being able to create models within the application, which currently we're unable to do. The benefit of being able to create models within the application also means that when we want to update models, we'll be able to have programmatic control over that. So right now, if I want to train a vision model, I would create the model the way that I'm showing you here. And then if I want to add another product to it, I would have to go then retrain the model, output another machine learning file that FileMaker would then be able to consume or load and then consume. So great questions there. Couple points about what we're looking at. On screen here. You'll notice that it went through and it's done testing based on the model, identified 3 different classes. Those are in fact the classes I fed it, and I got excellent precision back. So my photos must have been good here. I got 100% precision and recall on those. So I feel really confident that this model is going to work for me. So now you see in the upper right-hand corner where it says output, that's actually the model file. So that's the file that FileMaker needs for us to throw inside of a container field there. So in fact, that's what I'll end up doing. I'll actually take that and we'll drag it off to my desktop. And this way, then I can go move into FileMaker and show you what we actually do with these in FileMaker. So I've set up a layout in this file that's going to look similar probably to testing environments that you guys have set up as well. And on the far left is the container field where I'm going to store the model, and a little button below it that loads the model. And I'll get into showing you what that script looks like. But basically, it's just the new supported script step there. The box that you see in the middle under test image is just a container field that I'm going to point to with the new compute model, calculation function to test images to see if my model's working properly. And on the far right-hand side are the results of that calculation. So you see, I just simply drag and drop the model. It's a .ml model file. And the load button that's you see underneath it, really the rest of that's just some error trapping and some zoom level stuff or whatever. But the main thing is line number 3, configure machine learning model. I name it parts, and I'm pointing to the container field that actually loads it, and I pick the operation of vision. That's what we're going to need here. So really, we have to be mindful either at the beginning of a user session to load a model, or as the user is interacting with things that are going to require access to the model, you're including that script step in your scripts in order to be able to load it appropriately. So now in the test image, that's where we'll throw test images, but I have a calculation field that's going to do the results on the right-hand side. And if we take a look at what the calculation field looks like, here it's just a, and actually I experimented a little bit with this since I did this. Whoop, lost my cursor, sorry. Since I did this, and I found, I'll have to find it before we're done here and try to share it with you guys, but there was a undocumented, still undocumented function. Actually, Mike, you might have been, someone was on a thread with me on beta in ETS where I was presenting this issue, and there wasn't a way to just pull the one that is the match very elegantly. So what I was doing at first was doing this pattern count, looking to make sure that I got elements returned, and then I reformatted the elements, and then I peel off the top one. I used this second one to actually just peel off the top one. I won't confuse you guys with the complexity of these things. I'll try to show you the other one. But the key is just run the compute model. The compute model parameter points to the field where I'm dropping the test image, and then it results in the JSON that I'm going to share with you guys. So I've loaded the model, and now I'm going to take one of these images, and I'll just drag it into that, and now we see data that's returned. And what it's telling me is that it thinks that this picture is of the fuel filter, and it's 99% sure. Now, you might be a little confused at first, and I'll admit I was confused at first too, because it looks like the confidence values that are coming in for the headlight socket and the spark plug, and sorry if you can't see that through sort of zoom compression here, but it looks like it says it's 8.5 confidence and a 2.0. But it's really, if you look on the far right, it's an exponential of 6 and on both cases. So it's really saying 0.85% confidence. So all those add together is 100% confidence. So basically, it's telling me it's 99% sure it's a fuel filter, and in fact, visually, I can confirm that that's the case. So I'll just do another one just for giggles. I go into the headlight socket doorman and pull another one just to make sure that things are working properly. Drop another one in there, and sure enough, 99% sure. We got a nice clean model, so we can expect good things to happen here. So what I'm going to do, what I end up doing with this, just for fun, is I'm going to create a script. I'm going to throw this onto an iPhone, or I have already thrown it onto an iPhone, and I'm going to, instead of dragging something into a container, I'm going to take a picture and save it into a container and have whatever the photo was that I was taking evaluated by the model. So I'm using insert from device, and then I set a variable that then uses the compute model, and then I'm doing a substitute. This is kind of the old way of doing it, but it'll certainly work. So I'm actually just kind of getting rid of all the unneeded formatting, just coming up with an array of values, and then I'm going to take the top value as my as the result. That top value, then I'm going to go into find mode, and I'm going to use that as my search parameter. So it could have been a little more sophisticated, where I search by the ID that I had concatenated with the name, or I'm just going to search by the name in the name field. So then having a little bit of fun with it, also configuring it with, well, let's take a look here actually. The use case here is that somebody's out in the shop, they're working on a vehicle, and they need a fuel filter, spark plug, or headlight socket or something like that. But they don't have the whole part catalog memorized, so all they have to do is just take a picture using the device, and it'll find the appropriate one for them, and then they can kind of see where the stock is and all that type of thing. I've also hooked this up to Siri. I've just donated the script that does the... And I'll show you guys Siri shortcuts in a second on what we mean by donating the scripts. It's really easy to do, and I think you guys will have some fun with it. But I just couldn't resist triggering these types of activities on the phone. So let's check it out. What part is this? And this is where I'll take a photo of a spark plug. And there we see it correctly found the spark plug E310. Let's say, for example, we wanted to look at another part just to kind of show you how the ML actually works. Let's try that one more time. Hey Siri, what part is this? And just to prove I don't have anything up my sleeve. And there we see again the... So we see that works. And I'll admit, a couple of those times when I was trying it, sometimes the processing is a little bit different. It takes a little bit longer. So those were some good takes that I had that were nice and quick. So, and actually, hold on, I gotta find something for you that's actually pretty hilarious. So let's look at a demo of some. First of all, any other questions while we're still on these while I'm still on that part of it? If not, I would like to open up your minds beyond vision a little bit and show you some of the general machine learning models that are in place. This, to anyone who's done any reseller training, is the famous landscaping app with our superstar Doris Rojas profiled here. And these are examples of two different machine learning models, one of which I think is pretty interesting. This is what's called sentiment detection. And that basically means that a model that has already been created can read through different text and determine whether this is a positive or negative, in this case, review. So let's say these are a bunch of customer reviews for the Bryant Research Park. And the users have put all this information in. You notice that we're using the machine learning model that was loaded to determine whether this was a positive or negative review. So if we say something like, seriously the greatest, it certainly seems to think that it was positive. What about if I just type in the worst? Automatically the model detects that sentiment, says that it was negative. Now, I had a little bit of fun with this just to kind of see if this would work. And, oh, actually, so much for my fun with it. Well, all right, maybe I got a little juvenile there, but basically if you put a poop emoji in there, it detects that as negative sentiment. So I thought that was actually kind of interesting in the landscape of the universe that we live in right now. So, so the idea is, oh, and wait, I just got a text from Ronnie Rios. Is he sending me another example of something? No, something I already have. So, so the idea is just very subtle things. Sentiment analysis is a big deal in email or in voicemails you can have transcribed. It's like very popular from a machine learning standpoint. But the one that I think is really fascinating is this one for work orders. So the idea here is that there are a bunch of different work orders that have already been created for this customer. And now you want to actually gather some high-level information about the customer, about another work order, and you want it to predict how many hours there might be. And this is a really important point about machine learning. whatever ideas you have that you want to apply a machine learning model to, keep in mind that you have to have a ton of data. It was easy for me to go take a bunch of photos of something to create a vision model, but when we're talking about general models, you have to have a bunch of data available. Like, for example, we just had a discussion internally at iSolutions about building in what we would call a risk rating into our project management system that we built in FileMaker. And the idea would just be there's various factors that we would identify that would determine risk on some of the issues that are logged. And we'd calculate that versus how much time was left in the project to determine whether or not this was a risk that required escalation, before it became a problem. And we were all, oh, this is exciting. I can picture the model right now. This is gonna be great. And the discussion stopped because we realized we had no risk issue data to crunch. So what we did is we said, all right, let's table this for later while we go generate some of that actual risk data. Now you can fudge some of that stuff, but you really want to have real data if available. So here's an example of that. We have a ton of old work orders, and the way this was set up, you can see here, this is actually an example of regression. And so here's the predict models. So what we can do is we can say 4,000 square feet. There's 50 trees. We've got 2 employees. Don't need it to be eco-friendly. And let's say it's in San Francisco. Let's do run prediction. And here's an example of it noticed that the model was not available, so we have to load it first. Now it's loaded. And that number that you see there on the bottom was what the machine learning model thinks the number of hours might be on this application. And I think you guys' wheels are probably spinning in the same manner as mine were when I thought about doing something like this. So, very subtle behind the scenes use of machine learning. It doesn't all have to be vision. And I think you guys will actually find some compelling use cases for this. Don't worry, this is the longest part of the presentation that I have. I acknowledge that this one went a long time, but I want to pause here for a moment and see if anybody's got any questions or if they're interested in any examples that they might explore to integrate machine learning into their own applications. Well, I will take your silence as bewilderment, and I will tell you that I've actually been working with machine learning for many years, somewhat inadvertently. I won't burn too much time into this, but I built a machine learning model in FileMaker that crunched National Football League data, and I did that just so I could beat all my friends and family in fantasy football. Yes, again, very juvenile individual here, but that was important to me many years ago. I later then started, and it was all in FileMaker. I later started submitting predictions and accuracy predictions on player performances in future weeks to this aggregator. And it caught the eye of the NFL. And here's my trivia that I don't share with a lot of FileMaker people. I was working for the NFL as a fantasy football expert under a fake name I won't be sharing with you because I don't want you all Googling embarrassing things. But the secret there was the NFL's machine learning algorithm that was doing player prediction data all the way up until just like the 2017 season was based out of FileMaker. So I hope I get to tell that story. Do I win fantasy football leagues with my ML model? The question is whether I ever don't win all my fantasy football leagues. In the last 15 leagues I've been in, I've won 13 championships. I kid you not. Just ask the folks at Claris who are in fantasy football leagues with me, and I mercilessly crush them on a regular basis. Anyways, moving on from sports. But a true story. This is actually part of that model that I was sharing with you guys. So true story that you can do it now. So if I was doing it before, why couldn't I do it now? Well, it's different. Well, I used to have to actually run the model in a program called R and then export data out of that and consume it into FileMaker and then do magic in FileMaker. Now I can actually run the model in FileMaker. What we want next is the ability to be able to generate or create the model and train the model within FileMaker. And I assure you guys that's going to be coming soon. Okay. What I want to get into now is JavaScript support in the platform, because there's really two things that are interesting about JavaScript support here. The first of which is a script step support, and I guess we could call it function support within JavaScript. But the key is we now have native ability for FileMaker. We can call FileMaker from within JavaScript, and we can call JavaScript functions from FileMaker. Now, you might also be wondering, much in the same vein as the machine learning example I gave you, well, I'm pretty sure people are doing this already. So what's so great about this new thing? Well, the thing that people have been doing in order to, for example, get data into JavaScript that's inside of a web viewer, often having to leverage the calculation engine that is driving the web viewer in order to get data that's referenced within whatever function you're feeding it to be represented in your JavaScript. So now we have a more elegant way to do that, or the way that the JavaScript was communicating with the FileMaker file within the session was running FMP URLs, which was working and effective, but there could be some security things involved with that. There could also be issues like with which version of FileMaker was popping up until we got the version-specific FMP URL support in the past. It was totally doable, but I can tell you, after having done it the hard way a bunch of times, I'm really excited about this new support. So let me share that with you. So calling FileMaker from within JavaScript, it means we actually have support for something that's called FileMaker.performScript. This actually gets written into your JavaScript code, and it allows your JavaScript application to call a script in FileMaker. That's right, a FileMaker script. So the parameters here are the name of the FileMaker script and any script parameters or data that you want to pass from within your JavaScript environment in session into the FileMaker script. So for example, here I've got, this is a JavaScript function that I'm going to demonstrate for you guys. Oh, and by the way, the last row that I sent you guys on that Mike reposted, it's an FM help link, and I actually took this exact demonstration from a really well-defined FileMaker help page that's on the 19 help. So if you guys want to follow along step by step for what I'm doing after this, just go to that help link and you can follow along with everything I'm doing at your leisure. But the point of this is that what we're seeing in the example is that's JavaScript code. It's actually, what it says is there's a button, a submit button, and when that button is pressed, it's going to run this function called submit form. Submit form is going to gather data from various different elements that are in the JavaScript and combine all those parameters together, or those variables together, into one big parameter. And then it's going to send that parameter array over to FileMaker using, as you can see on the bottom, the FileMaker.performScript function. It's going to specifically run a store data from web form script in the FileMaker. And then it's going to pass the parameter that was compiled, which is the 3 different values of information. We'll see this working live in a second. But to flip this around, how do I perform JavaScript in the web viewer? We now have a script step called, well, perform JavaScript in web viewer. And it really needs 2 different things. It needs the object name, which is the actual layout object or the web viewer object that's running JavaScript that's on your layout. Also it needs the function within the JavaScript itself that you want to run. So for example, if I look at this code, this is an actual FileMaker script step, perform JavaScript in WebViewer. The object that I named was WebViewer in this case, and the function within the JavaScript is set user data. And I'm going to pass it these 3 different FileMaker field values that are going to represent the parameters that I want to feed down to the JavaScript running in the WebViewer. So let me just jump right into the demo there to kind of show you how this whole thing works. So I'm going to open up. Okay, so basically here's the file. So what's the point of this demonstration? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? Well, I'm actually trying to synchronize that I have these 3 FileMaker fields, the name, rating, and color. And you'll see in a second that the JavaScript that we're gonna see in a moment that's in the web viewer also has 3 fields, so to speak, name, rating, and color, except we're using a slider for the rating and a color picker for color. So the idea here would be, you wouldn't really necessarily do this particular demo, but maybe instead of having people type in a rating, you might want to have them put a slider. So you can have a tiny little web viewer on your layout that people don't even know is a web viewer that allows them to do a slider. But of course, that's only updating the JavaScript. You want it to update the field that slider represents. So you would do some sort of synchronous scripting like I'm going to show you here to do that. The same thing with a color picker. You could just have people type in a hex value into a field, or you could actually do a JavaScript JavaScript in a web viewer that shows a color picker, and then you want to just update that field by running a script in FileMaker in the background. So in order to do this particular demo, I created the 3 fields, color, rating, and name. I also created a 4th one called web view source. The demo actually did what my sort of philosophy is for how I access JavaScript in a lot of our web viewer applications. I challenged myself many years ago to figure out a way to run JavaScript in a web viewer without being connected to the internet. And I was shocked to find out back then that all you have to do is copy and paste JavaScript or CSS into fields and then just reference them in the calculation inside your web viewer. And it works. It's crazy that it works. So I'm going to show you a simple example of that. And that web view source field is just the field that I'm going to copy and paste all my JavaScript and HTML into. So you'll notice that the web viewer is set up. It's not an address. It's a field. It just says go take whatever's in that field and evaluate it, render it essentially, and show the results of that. So you'll notice that there's the allow interaction with web viewer content. That's something that's either necessary or not based on the functionality you're trying to achieve. But the new thing that you see down there, allow JavaScript to perform FileMaker scripts. That's a security setting that if you're just displaying specifically JavaScript or an application that's hosted elsewhere on a third party, you might not want it to allow it to run FileMaker scripts. I'm confident in allowing the JavaScript to run my FileMaker scripts from a security standpoint because I authored the JavaScript and it's being stored locally in my machine. So I'm comfortable with turning that on. Additionally, there's an extended privilege inside the file that requires scripts to be run. So you'll need to enable that as well. Oh, and by the way, also the web viewer you see is selected. If you notice up here in the upper right-hand corner, I've named that web viewer. The name of the web viewer object is important to the script step, as you'll see here in just a second. Oh my God, I actually tried to click the save button. All right, I'm going insane here. Okay, so let's take a look at how this mechanism might work. So again, the idea is to synchronize the web viewer and the fields so that we wouldn't necessarily need to have the fields on the layout, for example. This is what the code looks like, and you can find this code, this exact document on the help system that I shared with you guys. But essentially, at the top is a bunch of HTML, and on the bottom, under where it says in between the script tags, like right here and here, this is JavaScript. This is the submit form function, and this is another function, set user data, down here in the bottom. This is the JavaScript function. This is the function that is compiling data and then running a FileMaker script. The other thing that's super important is on the very top of the page, data:/text/HTML, comma, that's a data URL. I'm sure you guys have seen that in other contexts. That is required as a header when you're going to store your data locally within the application and then reference it. You have to treat it as a data URL. So really, what's being stored in the field is a data URL that happens to have all of the HTML and JavaScript that it needs following it. So that's an important part of it. If you've ever copied and pasted JavaScript that works in a browser, for example, but doesn't work in your web viewer into a field and reference the field in your web viewer and it doesn't work, check to make sure that your first line is that data URL. Okay, so now I'm going to just copy all of this and paste it right into that web view source. And probably the only other thing, and so this is what the JavaScript actually looks like. So again, the idea is you might have a color picker instead of a field or a slider instead of a rating. But the whole point of this is that I want to be able to show when a user updates the field in the JavaScript, it'll update the database, and also when the user updates the fields, that it updates the JavaScript. So what I did is I created an on-record load script trigger, a script, and it's triggered by the on-record load script trigger. And this is that same script that it's the perform JavaScript in web viewer, where I'm going into the web viewer object and I'm running the function set user data. And this is a new dialog that we have under perform JavaScript in web viewer that allows me to pick what my parameters are. And I picked those 3 parameters, which were the name, rating, and color fields that were defined. So the idea is, whatever FileMaker detects that I've updated those fields, run this script to go update those same corresponding elements inside the JavaScript. That's just how we keep those things in sync. And you'll see how we do the same thing in the JavaScript here in just a second. So let's scrub forward to testing this out a little bit. So I'm gonna slide this over. I'm gonna pick a different field. And now I would need to hit the submit button to actually run the function within the JavaScript. So if you remember that submit button is going to collect all the values that they're in there, the name, Lambda, rating, and so on, and then run the FileMaker.perform script function. So let's take a look at what that might look like. Okay, so let's test this out. So in this particular case, well, I'll turn on the script debugger because it's kind of interesting to see that the web viewer is actually going to launch a script. So I'll go inside the JavaScript first and I'll change that to Libby. I'll change it to number 1 and I'll pick a different color. Now, of course, I have to hit the submit button. So you'll notice that it's actually running a FileMaker script. That submit button in the JavaScript is running a FileMaker script. Pretty cool. And all it's doing is loading all those different variables. I'm going to parse those things out. And then I'm going to, then it actually updates the fields. Let's pause for a moment here. Beverly, so what happens when a field or a table is renamed? Does the script get updated, or are we brittle there? You know, that's a great question, Beverly, but I believe, and the name is escaping me, of what do we call it again when a calculation reference in a formula gets automatically updated again? There's a
indirection.
Yeah, I believe that, I'm confident that is applied here as well too, because we're actually interacting with the dialogue in that case. Now the problem would be, Beverly, to your point, which is very astute, and I think this is what you're pointing at, is inside the JavaScript. If someone goes and changed the name of that script, for example, in FileMaker, all bets are off. You'll error out in that case. There won't be a script. So to that degree, I think it's important to mention, yeah, let's make sure that if you're referencing a script from your JavaScript, a FileMaker script for your JavaScript, let's leave the name of that alone. Okay. So I think you get, and here's the idea of changing it. It's just the other direction, changing the fields inside FileMaker and running the script. It runs the set user data in web viewer through the on record load script trigger, and then it'll go into the web viewer and update those fields accordingly. So kind of a sexier version of this is a file that I've got. Let me just pull this one up for you guys. And by the way, this is going to be a demo kit that gets sent out. Mike, you probably already have it. But if not, all the user groups are getting sent the demo kits for doing presentations like this. And this is the one in there. And this one comes from, this is actually a file that we built that looks like this. It's kind of a demo thing just to show you some cool stuff that you can do with JavaScript. And this is what's called the Sankey diagram. And this is from my favorite repository of JavaScript libraries for data visualization, d3.org. Go check it out. Sankey diagram was this cool one I kind of fell in love with. And Ronnie Rios took the same one, and he made it so that, for example, when users are clicking on one of these things or interacting with it, they have this really, I mean, this is just such an attractive way to look at data. But the idea is if they click on one of these things, it's actually going to load the data back into the FileMaker portal that you see below. So we're interacting with the JavaScript, and it's updating FileMaker. But then if I go into FileMaker, which is the value in the portal, the same principle that I just shared with you guys, and commit this record, you'll see that it automatically updates the JavaScript. Really elegant, fluid interaction between JavaScript and FileMaker. And to be quite honest, people may not even know that this is JavaScript in your layout. And that's the important principle here. You can deploy this on desktop, you can deploy it into WebDirect, you can deploy it onto iOS, and you get this same functionality. I think it's a really exciting age that we're living in now, that we have this type of native support. Questions so far on this type of JavaScript integration? Comments, thoughts, musings, anything really?
I haven't seen a useful Sankey diagram. Maybe I'm just doing the wrong kind of work. I'd be interested in seeing different kinds of visualizations, but the proof of principle is still pretty exciting.
Yeah, I might have, honestly, I might have forced a round peg into a square hole on the Sankey diagram just because I liked, it was so attractive to me. But it was also one of the more approachable visualizations in D3 that wouldn't have taken me like 2 weeks to kind of wrap my head around to demonstrate. But I completely echo your sentiment, honestly.
Sankey, if you think about it, Sankey diagrams are really good for displaying relational data versus aggregated data. So like if you have a pie chart, you want to display aggregated data, but a Sankey chart, you're displaying relationships between where each column is a separate group of records, and then you're showing the relationship between two. And so there's also Sankey diagrams where you have more than two columns. So there would be like a third column in the middle of the chart where you would be clicking through. So it's recursive, and it's like my favorite chart too. So I love seeing that same example.
So so let me flip this around. Thank you for the confirmation on that. while I failed trying to show you a hanky earlier with the emoji, that Sankey is actually resonating. All right, clearly I'm getting a little slap happy here. I apologize. I'll skip the humor and dive into the interesting stuff. There is a script step. If I can, it's about as good as I can zoom, but it's called Save a Copy as Add-on Package. And it is in preview, but what this allows you to do, and I won't necessarily go into all of those steps, but I will promise you that I haven't been talking to Todd Geist a lot about this recently. He's got a ton of really cool, probably some blog posts out already. I was just on a podcast with him. We were talking about this amongst some other things. There's gonna be some amazing resources to step you through how to create these add-on packages. And Todd knows because he was involved in creating the add-ons that are gonna ship probably over the next month or so with the platform. So you all get add-ons that are actually built into the platform here shortly. But in the meantime, you can create your own add-ons. And what add-ons are, well, you already probably know add-ons from, let me actually show you some things that might look familiar. Hold on, bear with me. This is, let me pull this over. This is also something you're going to see in the future that I'm really proud of. These are templates. These are something that's going to be in the platform in the future as well too. I'll save that announcement for later down the road, but this is something that that I was able to build from a learning standpoint along with my team at iSolutions, and there'll be plenty of information on that later. But basically, it's a FileMaker file. Let's take a look at this FileMaker file. And let's say, for example, on the Events tab, I have this calendar window, and I have a layout that's supposed to show a calendar. Now, I've created calendars in JavaScript before and integrated them in with FileMaker, and I can tell you that they're nothing south of 100 hours worth of effort, even if you've got a library that's pretty done, pretty complete already, especially if you want to have interaction and any kind of level of sophistication there. But I'm going to show you a new way to do it. You'll notice here when you're in FileMaker 19 and you're in layout mode, you see that you've got this new pane or tab here called Add-ons. And when you hit the plus button, you guys probably already saw these before. Did you know, if you guys didn't realize, I think it was actually 17, or let's call it 18, and they're all blurred together for me. But the ability to add add-on tables, if you recall. So that was like, you could just pick, a table that you didn't already have in your file and, add addresses, and it would go and it would add a table into your schema. It would add supporting scripts and even some supporting layouts for you. Pretty cool. And that's all based on the fact that the entire FileMaker application can be represented as XML. So that makes it portable and packageable. And basically when you click something like this, what it's doing is it's adding all that XML to your existing XML appropriately integrated so that you get this functionality. So, oh, thank you, Beverly. Add-on tables were introduced in 17. And now, well, while you can't scroll down and see anything yet in 19, I promise you that in the very near future, and I'm not speaking out of school here because all of the marketing missives are making this promise already. So this is not Chris saying this, this is Claris. You will have the ability to add add-ons. I'm going to visually show you examples of all these add-ons in a second. For example, one of them might have been a calendar add-on, which is in fact one of the add-ons that's going to ship with FileMaker. So how hard is it? Let's talk about 100 hours or more to integrate JavaScript calendar into your application. Let's take a look at how long it takes. Somebody start a stopwatch and go. Oh, that's super exciting. It's not working in this thing. Let me do this. Let's flip over here. Oh, it's actually working. It's not visible. How about this one? And go. Added. This is an add-on object that you see on this layout. This is giving me an opportunity to show you. This is one of the add-ons that's going to ship. We all know charting, and I'm sure we all love the charting tool that's built into FileMaker. Frankly, I don't really even teach it anymore in classroom training because I say people should go find charting libraries and integrate them. But I understand that there's some overhead involved in that. Not anymore. This is going to be one of the add-ons that ships with the platform, which is called Simple Charts. And in Simple Charts, and first of all, let me back up for a second. When you add something on, you'll see that there's data already in it. And that's because when the add-on is loaded, sample data comes with the add-on so that you can preview it and help you configure things with your own data. But when it comes time to actually map it to your real data or provide setup or setting instructions, you just simply click on the little gear icon, which incidentally is only available to only users of your system that have full access privileges. So don't worry about users going in and reconfiguring these things. And you can do different things like pick the different types of charts. So simple charts will have support for bar, line, pie, donut, and gauge. They have some animation involved, and they're also interactive, which beats the other charts in the old charts in FileMaker. Then you'll also want to do some mapping. You're going to point it to a layout much like in CWP or with APIs, you have to point to a layout in FileMaker. Currently, that is. This will evolve over time. That tells you the table context and where it can find certain fields that you're going to map to. And then you can just do field mapping. So with like calendar, I would have had to tell it what table the data is coming from, what field is going to be the start date, what field is going to be the start time, and so on. And then after you save all those, then you can play around with your chart. And you'll notice that I'm running a script here. I pointed it, to something that I want to run, and I can run a script in this case. Most of the add-ons that are going to ship very soon will be able to pop up card windows, and you can send them to another card window. These are card windows that pop up over a web viewer, and will do so on WebDirect as well, which is a applause-worthy new feature in FileMaker 19.2 is the support for card windows, not insignificant. So take a look at so this is the chart, and my dog Lambo is trying to remind me of things in the background, trying to do a little producing here. Another one of the ones that'll ship is this text editor. So this is a text editor add-on you can drag into a layout, and you can apply HTML formatting to the text field. Now to your fields, to your text, I'm sorry. Now keep in mind though, the add-on then is gonna output it to another field somewhere. So this is actually gonna be perfect for if you wanna do HTML email editing and authoring inside your FileMaker application, and then save it to a field that, let's say, you then send over to Claris Connect to represent the body in an HTML email that you're sending out through Outlook. So I think this will be a very handy tool for you guys to use there as well. Or how about heat map? I've only just recently become familiar with heat maps, and I kind of dig it. It's technically a calendar, but it's really just kind of showing, hey, we're, like great project management tool, for example, to show the different degrees of the color, the darkness of the colors, telling us when those days have a lot more tasks associated with them. So heat maps are coming as well too. I'm saving my two favorites for the end. Or how about a barcode creator? That's right. Not only can you read barcodes, but you can now generate them dynamically within your application for free. And by the way, send Todd a thank you, because he basically sacrificed his barcode creator product to be able to create this add-on to ship with the platform. And I think that was mighty generous of him. But simply just, putting in a value and hitting the button will add something into a container for you, and all that's part of the configuration on where all that goes. Super excited about that. Also, a timer. How about a cool little timer where you can start and stop a timer, and then based on the time, it'll then go and update this time logged with a cumulative time, which I think is pretty neat from an hours management standpoint. And let's see. Okay, now my favorite ones. Activity timeline, where you can integrate in different whatever it is, whatever records you want to integrate into an activity timeline that you can then drill down into the timeline and pop up a card window that represents the detail of that data. Really a cool way to compartmentalize long lists of data, or date-specific lists of data that I think will be really interesting for people. Then the one that's my favorite is Kanban. For those of you that have your own, homegrown FileMaker systems for project management or bug tracking or Scrum management, you're probably pushing that out to Jira to use like a Jira board or Trello boards or something like that. Now you can actually integrate those natively into your FileMaker applications through this really cool Kanban board add-on that's coming. And I believe, let's see, so editor, heat map, Kanban, photo gallery, I didn't show that, simple charts, timer, barcode creator, activity timeline. A whole bunch of these things are coming for you. And the neat thing about this is because the community can create these using the Save a Copy as add-on package, these will eventually become part of the FileMaker marketplace, and that you'll have access to add-ons that people can do for free or even license and sell. You can do those yourself, but this will grow exponentially over time, and frankly make the ability to create compelling, applications for users that don't even know JavaScript by simply dragging and dropping and configuring. This is going to be a very real thing that's happening, and to me, this is why I consider the FileMaker 19 release to be the true democratization of FileMaker code, and what I think is one of the most exciting releases in a long time. Patrick, you want to share with us that you've used that script step to save that copy as add-on?
Yeah, so exactly like you've been saying, it's something I've been incredibly interested in for some time, just the ability to make our code more portable, which is what this is affording us. It's something we don't share with a lot of other platforms, and people have created some tools to do so, but to have this natively built in, it's been a big deal.
And to have a marketplace to share it. That's going to be insane, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
no, it's going to be a big deal. So the question I have right now, I guess, is I'm confused about, so when I've used the script step as it exists now, it will save the entire contents of a file as a package, rather than just the exposed windows I would have been led to believe based on the parameter there.
And for the edification of others, because you actually have to specify what the window is that you're working with. That.
Right. So there's two parameters there. It asks for a window name, and then it also asks for it's a flag, replace UUIDs, which that's not something I entirely understand, and I wanted to see if you could speak on that.
In relation to the question about it being in preview mode, or just in general.
Both, if you can squeeze it in.
Yeah. So. The highest level in the UUIDs is actually, apologies for not being able to produce the photo gallery for you. My images appear to not be loading, but apologies there. But you get the principle of it. It's a resizable photo gallery to answer that question. So now though, one of the really important parts about add-ons is the ability to, like, for example, in this case, not only add on, but remove on. So you'll notice here by simply right-clicking on that add-on, I can uninstall the entire thing. And that means I have to reach into script objects and layout objects and tables and fields and such.
Sure.
And each one of those are required to have their own unique UUID so that they can be tracked and extracted.
So the FileMaker can just, like you said, excise them after an installation.
Yeah, and for my money, honestly, that part is pretty darn exciting to me, because I used to tell people in training classes about add-on tables, and if you add an add-on table more than once, like, well, really, you can't get those things out of there. Once you've added them on, there's no way to get them out. You can really nuke a file by doing that. So now this is a really clean extraction from it, and the UUIDs are supporting that, but then the window portion that you're talking about. Yeah, that's interesting. That might actually have something to do with the preview part of this.
Right. And I didn't want to dwell too much on that if you didn't have anything you could really offer.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily have something to show you there, but I believe that is what the difference is. And also, though, it is my understanding that preview also has to do with the fact that they're basically trying to convey to everybody that there's going to be native add-ons that you can work with, and that there's going to be marketplace support that's coming. So that probably has something to do with why they're calling this a preview. I actually honestly think that the preview thing will be a bit nomenclature that we'll end up seeing quite a bit of, because now FileMaker is in this agile engineering environment, which also I'll say is probably one of the more cool hidden things about the 19 release. It was the last annual release, which and the whole engineering team at FileMaker has gone into these Scrum teams. So there's a chance, while it's probably not likely that it'll happen this often, but there's at least chances that they could, with 2-week Scrums, they could potentially be releasing new features into the application in over 2-week cycles. It'll probably happen quarterly or however that'll work. But it's an exciting time that we can be in, where we can see support, or more importantly, bug fixes and support coming in. Oh yeah, maybe I didn't have. That we're going to see these kind of things built into the platform.
Yeah, I had one more question relating to that. Normally when you implement the add-on tables, it's able to, well, how does it identify what a primary key would be in terms of being able to create the relationships involved? And is that exposed to us currently?
Is the primary key of the data that's represented in the add-ons exposed? Or
so say I have a individuals table that I've created, homebrewed, my own accord. No field has been created by default FileMaker. and I want to add the address add-on. I don't know that the address add-on has a way to identify what the primary key is so they can create the relationship there as part of the add-on.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. You know what it begs is some sort of get function support for something like that, right? Unfortunately, the hack way is for you to generate your entire, to represent your entire application as XML, and then, to find those and locate those that way. But to me, it seems like we'll end up having some get function support to solve that very type of problem that you're talking about.
Okay,
there.
thank you.
Sure. And again, my apologies on this is actually an add-on for the web viewer. I don't, let's see, I don't have access to the actual code.
You can fix that by adding the data text HTML to the viewer.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay,
It's
yes, you probably worked with the same file before. I see. Okay, gotcha. Right, let's actually try that. Let's do it this way. Let's try that out. Oh, it just shows me. All right, I did that wrong. I apologize for that. But man, I had that working before without adding something in there. I don't know what I ended up breaking there. But Steven, you probably worked that same file, right? The one that from Geist?
Correct.
Oh, you did. Okay. Yeah, I probably just didn't put that in there appropriately, and I apologize for that. But it's cool looking. I promise you, it looks cool when you get into it. Does anybody have good examples of, yeah, I'll work on that off screen here while, anybody have any interesting add-ons that they want to create or want to see actually ship with the FileMaker application? I'm very interested in this dialogue.
I'm going to be working on an implementation of a grid view, just a standard form.
Yeah,
that's responsive.
Yeah, right. And by the way, this photo gallery is also responsive for whatever it may be worth. I see what I'm actually doing here.
Now that there's the script steps to go back and forth and the JSON functions to transport data, we can finally do like a cleaner implementation of something like Bootstrap UI in the front end and build ourselves forms that honestly look better than and behave better than what you can do natively in FileMaker.
And these would be supported in WebDirect as well?
That's a good question.
Well,
Not only WebDirect, but people, and you're starting to see more and more people that are like, why isn't this supported on the iOS version of WebDirect? And everybody's like, well, why are you using the iOS version of WebDirect? But it's still not an answer to the question. The answer is I don't know yet because I haven't had the time to do it.
Just curious, FileMaker here.
So Chris asked about add-ons we want to see. He showed the one for a text editor with HTML text. I would want to build or happily purchase somebody else's Markdown editor. I take a lot of my notes in Markdown, and I've got a really sloppy way of doing that now in FileMaker where I just basically keep the text in a field and open it in an external editor when I want to edit it and then insert it back into FileMaker. But I would love to be able to replace that with a web viewer and just edit the code in line.
it's a really good idea. I like that a lot.
Note to self, build Markdown editor for Joe for Christmas.
Yeah.
Aw.
I think I've played around with a Markdown editor before, so there might be one like
oh, there's literally hundreds of examples. It's like the first rite of passage for a JavaScript developer to make a Markdown editor. So it would just take a weekend or so finding the right one.
You just perfectly encapsulated why this is also exciting. I'm sure people who hear about this new support who don't know JavaScript or saying, well, this isn't for me. Well, someone else creating it could be. And the best part about this is all the libraries that are available. FileMaker, we're way late to the game on this stuff. Like this, JavaScript is the most popular language, anywhere. And so therefore there's libraries all over the place. Like the statement you just made is the perfect reason why JavaScript is so exciting. you know, so Mike doesn't have to go build this whole thing from scratch in JavaScript. He can go find a library that's doing either everything that he wants, or it's really close, and then just go modify that code so that it does everything that you want. And then now we have the ability, while you're in there modifying that code, to build in references to running scripts in FileMaker at different actions. I mean, holy cow, it's going to be insane. Probably the granddaddy of all add-ons that we're looking for is this seating chart thing. We've had this seating chart that began its life as Flash. I don't go ahead, laugh at the old man. I used to do Flash stuff, but you know, and we did it for like the Oscars, and now Disney uses a JavaScript version that we do for all their premieres. And we would love to get that into a licensed add-on, by the way. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that. But to us, that allows us to productize something like that. We just literally had a lead come in this morning saying, hey, we're blah, 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 and we like your seating chart. And unfortunately, the bad news is we got to say, yeah, it's going to be kind of expensive to integrate it into your FileMaker application. Not if it was an add-on that was on the marketplace that we could sell a license to at a more reasonable cost. So that's the type of thing that I'm pretty excited about. Okay, I have a couple more things I want to fit in towards the end here, and they're easy, they're quick ones, but they're kind of fun. The first of which is configure NFC reading. It's just a script step called configure NFC reading, and it has different actions. The ability to read NFC. We don't yet have the ability to write NFC, which I believe someday, you know, we will, but you can read NFC. And so NFC is basically, you all know it already if you've ever used Apple Pay. You turn on your app, you configure the app, you authenticate, and then you tap it on, you know, the terminal, and then your credit card is processed. NFC, you know, you can also pull out a badge and tap it on something, and then it grabs the information of what you're tapping. In my example that I'm going to show you, I use NFC tags. I went on Amazon and for like $5 bought like 50 little stickers. They are basically these stickers right here. They look like this, and they have a little, you know, chip or whatever inside them, and each individual one of them can be read and written to in red. So the key is, and then so the idea is that you actually, there's two parts of this. You have to have something that you can read, like a tag, and you have to write information to it. I'm going to show you quickly how you can do that. I'm going to introduce you to an app to do that. And then the other part of it is that you need something that can actually read it and extract the information from it. So configure NFC reading just turns on. So, you know, if you guys have done NFC before on your phone, when you see that little card pop up, and you'll see it in a second, the thing that makes the card pop up in FileMaker is when you configure NFC reading. So you're saying, pop up the card, and when you detect an NFC tag somewhere, run a script, the FileMaker script in that file, pass it some parameters, probably the information you gathered from the tag. And if you don't get a tag, you can actually do a timeout. So you can say, like, in 3 seconds, make that thing sink back down to the bottom so it's not annoying people are in their way. And also, by the way, you can get into continuous reading, so you can do multiple scans at the same time. Now, the one thing, and then you can, if you want that thing to go away, you can just pick the action of cancel, the configure NFC reading script step, and do action cancel, and then it'll go away for your users. Now, in order to be able to extract it, the script that you're calling when you do get a positive read has to use the get script parameter to get the parameters that are returned. Now, you'll get 8 lines of code, or an array of 8 values that come back every time you get a positive read, or just a read. Sometimes there won't be values in them. Like if you don't incur an error, you won't get an error. But if you do incur an error, you just go and grab that second value from the string, the error string, and you know, do something with it, or, you know, build that into your script. Or in my case, what I'm going to do is go down to number 6, the string value of a multi-line parameter, and I'm actually going to actually use that inside of a find. So let me actually show you my Here's a FileMaker file, and the idea is, this is that Sparkplug thing again. This one I thought was kind of clever. You go to the bin. You figured out what the Sparkplug is. You go grab 5 of them. You get to the actual bin in your inventory cage, and it says, oh, it's empty. All I see on the bottom of this empty bin is a sticker. So you can just pull out your phone and tap that sticker, and it'll actually process the order in this case. So what I'm doing is I attached a script to this out of stock button here, and the script, in the interest of time, just runs the configure NFC reading. okay? And so configure NFC reading, run a script called order review, and timeout within 3 seconds if you don't see anything. Here is the script called order review. And you'll see that I'm showing in line 1 the custom dialog, just so that I can show you guys what the parameter that actually gets returned. But in real life, I would skip down to line 5, and I would take line number 6. I use get value in that array, and I just want the 6th one, which is the string. And I'm going to extract that out, and I'm going to use that variable, that barcode variable in my search. So the magic trick that gets that to work is writing. Well, this isn't FileMaker at all. I thought I would just turn you guys on to this app that's called NFC. I think it's just called NFC, and it's free. It looks like that. And what you can do is you can either read or write. Let me get this out of the way. So it's got two things on the bottom: NFC writer and NFC reader. So what I did is I took a sticker. And I go into the NFC writer mode and I write, and I pick the text option. You can write to the tag, but I pick the text option. I then paste it in the text, which is the ID of this object, or the product ID. And then I say write. And so I'm actually tapping the thing. Up pops that card. That's the card I was talking about. Tap it, and then I dismiss it. And then I save that to the NFC writer. And you can use this NFC reader part to read it and make sure that you're getting the tag back. Okay, so that's how I go and I train, so to speak, all the different tags. I went a little crazy with the tags too. I've got tags sitting on my walls and stuff in this movie room we have, where I just tap my phone to it and it goes to Apple TV, turns on the hue lights into movie mode, and does some other weird smart home thing. So if you want to just play with those independently, you can have some fun with NFC tags. So let's actually, oh, whoops, here's the demo I wanted to show you. Let's take a look at what this experience is like for the user. Okay, robot Chris, take it away.
I click out of stock. I see ready to scan. I tap the tag in the back, and then you'll see the information that actually gets passed. You'll see that it's an array of values, some of which were passed over. I didn't have any errors, so I didn't get something like an error string. But I do see the 8944 value, which is actually the product ID value that was.
That's line number 6. So I scrub that line, and then I say, oh, okay, go find that object and send me into the new order, the order mode, and I'm able to go place an order. And all this was initiated by a user just going and tapping on an NFC tag in this use case. So that's NFC tags. Anybody have any use cases for NFC tags or play around with them? Yeah, Steven.
Added to the chat just now a link to a calculation that will convert that to a JSON object. So you don't have to worry about the order.
Or the accuracy, yeah.
And be able to natively
and if you have multiple data points, it will make a array of that as well.
Oh, so if you do continuous, then you get like the child
no,
JSON?
If your tag has like multiple data points, because there's multiple.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Extremely useful. Hold on, let me.
So my use case for this is museum displays.
Perfect.
Actually, there's my wife works for a museum, so they have like a living history app where you can go and tap on things.
That was what my use case was for iBeacons. And it's pretty much the same thing. The support we have for iBeacons is go attach a beacon to something, and the script step turns on polling for said beacon. Same with like geofencing, for example. And then when you get near it, you know, with however you've configured the beacon, it'll pop it up. Now, I found that in a museum setting, that might not be ideal, because you might actually have two different, like, you know, art or things up on the wall, like pictures on the wall, and the beacon might pick up the wrong one. But in the case of tap, you actually have to physically interact with that, which I think is perfect for that use case, Mike. That's a great one. Okay, the final thing that I look forward to sharing with all of you, and this has been a ton of fun, is Siri support. Now, I'll give you the caveats. Maybe I'll just start with the big bucket of water. But first of all, your Siri shortcuts, the thing that I'm going to demonstrate here to you, are private to you as a user. Now, granted, you can turn on cloud support, and then you have access to all the shortcuts you create across all of your devices. But we don't at least natively now, have the way to be able to save a Siri shortcut along with the app and install it onto a user's device to do the types of things that we're doing here. But, you know, I'm saying it out loud, I haven't investigated the iOS SDK support for stuff like this or other ways to kind of bundle these things together. But the thing that makes me excited about Siri shortcut support is I did a presentation back in 2016 at DevCon, and it was, I don't remember what they ended up calling it, but it was like communicating from your FileMaker apps to other apps on the device using URL schemes, which was just like every application has its own reserve, well, most of them have their own reserved URL schemes, like FileMaker has the FMP URL. I had discovered that all the native Apple apps also had schemes, and so I put together some fun stuff. And if you go Google DevCon 2016 iOS one-step integration or something is what it was called, go check it out. But my favorite part about it was I was profiling an application in there called Workflow.io. And it wasn't super elegant. You would have to pop up this app. If something didn't have URL scheme support, you'd have to pop open the app to actually see it all working and, you know, do all this stuff. And it wasn't super elegant, but it was really fun. And one of the individuals at Claris who was reviewing the presentation was like, "Ah, Chris, this is good stuff. Although, you know, URL schemes are kind of a, you know, old thing. Like, should we really be telling people about these? They're probably going to be deprecated soon. And I don't really know if this is an Apple thing anymore." And I'm proud to say that within 6 months, Apple actually acquired Workflow.io, integrated that into the iOS operating system, and now that is Siri shortcuts. If you guys haven't played with Siri shortcuts, it's really cool. It's actually a lot of fun. You can actually create scripts that work with a bunch of applications on your phone or iPad. I think watch is involved in there some way, shape, or form too. I don't have a watch, so I don't know. But I'll show you an example of two really cool, one super simple way to show you where the support comes from, and then one kind of cool one where I used a Siri shortcut to allow voice command input for my FileMaker script. So, oh, there it is. Right on, Tony. Thank you so much. I had a ton of fun with that. And by the way, that was the presentation where I used a FileMaker app to either turn a light on green or red, in case any of you were there, where it didn't work the first time and then it worked. But whatever, it's no talking fish, but I think it was pretty special nonetheless. Let's get into the 2020 version of this stuff. So first of all, here's a FileMaker file that I'm going into the extended privileges and I'm turning on FM URL script. In the absence of having any documentation when I was first putting this demo together earlier in the year, that one tripped me up. So go turn on FM URL script, and I don't know why it tripped me up because that's the whole principle behind URL schemes communicating between apps. So once that's turned on in your application, you go into scripts that you want to, and this is the terminology we have to get used to, that you want to donate to Siri. So here I have a script that just simply says, hello world, and then it shows a script parameter. So what I do is I right click on that, and you'll notice that in FileMaker 19, you have a new option that's called Enable Shortcuts Donation. So we just basically donate this script to Siri. And then what I do is I upload that file. And in my case, I put the file on my phone. And the other trick that kind of snuck up on me was you have to go into the file and at least open it one time in FileMaker Go so that it's available to Siri shortcuts. So those two things alone, I burned at least one Saturday of my life trying to figure that out without any documentation. So let's say I open it up, there's the app. Now I can go into Siri shortcuts. And for those of you that have not seen Siri shortcuts, it's an app that's actually called Shortcuts, sorry. And you open it up and here's all the different shortcuts that I've created. Some of them are still in there from when I used to have the Workflow.io app, and then when Shortcuts came out, it actually converted that app and all my shortcuts into these shortcuts. So inside of a shortcut, when you create a new one, the first thing you see is add action. And this is going to be like the trigger action. This is not too unlike the experience that we have in Claris Connect, by the way. And when I pick the action, not only can I name it and can I give it a little icon, which I'll scrub through because it's not germane here, but I can actually pick one of the apps. And this is the new support. We have Run FileMaker Go Script is now one of the supported script steps. I pick any of the files that are on the phone that have at least one donated script. And in this case, I'm going to pick the assets Siri file, their device. And then I can tell it what script to run. When I click script, it goes into that file and shows me hello device, which is the only script I have that was donated to Siri. And then optionally, I can even pick a parameter. And this is where you can kind of have some fun with it. So I went in and I picked another one of the functions, which is a scripting function. that I can go in and use their version of a get function to say what the device details are of the device that's running this script, add that as my parameter. So I'm grabbing that first, and then now I can reference that very much in a very Claris Connect type way. This is kind of like step data from Claris Connect. And now I can actually use that as my parameter, as the device name. And now what I do, and then I can use a voice operation to actually run that script. So let's take a look at that script running. Well, actually, you can just run it that way. So let's take a look. All right.
Run FileMaker device.
And there it just
now we see that Siri has communicated.
Blah, 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 blah. It basically, it popped up, it ran my script. Now with time permitting, I want to show you something that I think is pretty darn cool. Putting all those pieces together. This is a demo file that I created a few DevCons ago that I'm happy if you guys email me, I can send you the one. I've got all sorts of integrations in it, but basically it's a dog walking app, and it's legitimately something that I've used. I use this as a way to get familiar with sensors. You can see I have a lot of references to sensors in here. I wanted an app that I could pull up on my phone when I was walking the dogs and say, hey, it's Chris walking the dog. Here's the dog I'm walking. And it's going to track all my steps, and it's going to tell me how much exercise I got and how much the dog did, and it's going to create logs. The problem with it was that I often remember to start it when I leave, but I also have my hands full with dogs pulling me in different directions, and I kind of would like to have some voice commands to be able to start a walk. And the other part is I always forget to end the walk at the end of it, you know, when I'm done. So voice commands there I think would be very useful as well. So what I did is I have a start walk script that I had donated, as you can see by that icon. I've already enabled, I've donated it to Siri. And then end current walk. Now, let me jump right into the Siri part because this is where the cool stuff happens. Oh, actually, start current walk. If you look, I'm actually creating a new record and I'm setting a field that's coming in from a script parameter. So I grabbed a script parameter, which indicates that a script is actually running this script and it's passing it a parameter. And I grab the first value from it and I save it into the walker field. And I grab the second value and save it into the dog field. You guys probably know where I'm going with this. So inside my Siri shortcut, this is what the Siri shortcut looks like. I actually am using this scripting function where Siri is asking me a question, and I type in the question, who's walking the dog? And then the user answers, which is provided input, and whatever the answer is gets saved into a variable called walker. And then I do the same thing for which dog is being walked. And then I use this cool list function, or whatever they're called, action, where I compile an array of the walker and the dog, and then I pass that to my FileMaker, my FileMaker script. I'm running here, dog walker tracker Siri. I want to start a new walk, and then I'm going to pass it that parameter as a list. So let's take a look at what that use case sounds like, or looks like, with voice commands in place.
Hey Siri.
Not you.
Start my dog walk.
Go ahead.
No, not you. Okay.
Shortcut says, who is walking the dog?
Shirley.
Shortcut says, which dog is being walked?
Libby.
Or this one.
So now I'm inside the app. The script is actually running, and you see that it's already filled in the walker and the dog with the voice inputs from Siri shortcuts.
So the idea there is you can leverage Siri to input data into your fields as script parameters, which I thought was really fun. And then of course the flip side of this is that I don't, you know, I've got my earpods in and I'm walking the dogs and I don't have to like worry about ending the walk or it's fumbling with my phone. I just go, hey, SIRI, end my dog walk. And then it goes ahead and ends that script and logs all that information within the FileMaker app. And my experience has been that FileMaker Go doesn't need to be open. It'll go wake it up, find the app, run your script, do your whole thing. It's pretty darn cool. And with 4 minutes to spare, I'll throw that back out to you guys. Is anyone interested in playing around with some Siri shortcuts, or do you have a use case that might be meaningful for this new feature?
So what you're saying is that if you needed to roll this out to a whole organization, every individual person is going to have to do that, configure that Siri shortcut on their phone.
I'll admit, Dave, that
you can share shortcuts.
Yeah.
There's a file format for them, so you can share them out. The user would have to authorize installing it, just like installing a profile or an app, but you can share them, yes.
I don't know what the utility for installation would be. Like if I put a shortcut, I don't know, whatever the file format is, into like a container field, like does iOS recognize it and just go install it as Siri? I haven't tried that. And if that's the answer, then hooray. But that would be basically how you would roll this out to users, much like in the way you would install a plugin or something. But I don't know that to be true. I haven't tried that.
Somebody should probably answer that.
Yes. Yeah, that's my favorite move too. Oh, good. Someone has homework. Please share with the group. Device management platforms. So Morgan.
MMC was the other one I was gonna, or MMS or whatever it's called, was what I was gonna think. You can pre-install those profiles, so you might be able to pre-configure a device with those shortcuts.
My mind went immediately to mobile device management and just saying, you know, within the platform itself, can push out those shortcuts too. And if that's the case, that's our answer for deploying these.
Yeah.
So
Right.
a little bit of experimenting in the lab yet for me to do there.
Siri shortcuts are also useful for accessibility apps for people like visually impaired.
And voice
so
input.
if a blind person is using a phone to do data entry, it's a lot easier to set up shortcuts for those workflows.
Yeah, much in the same manner as I was using the voice input in this case would be great. Would be great for that. So, I brought you guys right to the post. I apologize if I stepped on any other things that you had, but this was a lot of fun for me to show you some of these new features and hopefully get you guys thinking about it. Any questions before we wrap up and I hand it back to Mike for housekeeping?
No, I think you answered everybody's questions during the meeting, so it was great.
Really
Right.
appreciate it.
But everybody's hanging out that was here at the beginning, so I owe them that shortcut. So let me see here. I'm gonna share my screen here in a second. I just gotta kind of clean some stuff up.
Oh yeah, everybody is still here. That's always fun. that makes me feel better.
All right, so I'll share my screen. So the shortcut I wanted to share was, it's funny when, you know, I'm beta testing these things too, but not everything makes it into the beta testing documentation. So people that are smarter or more clever than me figure out shortcuts. So I haven't checked to see if this was actually in 18. I'm assuming it's new in 19, but Command Option K pulls open a new Spotlight-like window in FileMaker 19 that allows you to search quickly through your layouts. So if I type in asset, you see I got asset list here and asset details. And then, you know, entering it will change you over. So Command Option K. So rather than using, you know, file manage layouts and picking a layout and then opening it only to have it open a new window for you, it's a lot easier now to switch between layouts just with this window. I'm imagining it might work on Windows too. Control Alt K, Control Shift K, something like that. I don't have a Windows machine to test it on, but that is the thing I made everybody wait for. But I think it's over.
Before you leave, if you modify the layout and you do this, will it prompt you to save the layout if that setting's set?
I think if you turn off that setting, you mean, under preferences, layout, save layout changes automatically. Let me turn it off and I'll check. Real-time testing. This one's easy. Asset details. Oh, I need to make a change to the layout, don't I? It'll ask you if you want to save it. If you hit don't save, it still takes you there. I'd imagine it saves it and just completes the action. That's one of the first things I turn off in FileMaker Pro, though, is automatically saving my layout changes. I always forget that's there. All right. So again, thanks everybody. There's not really any housekeeping, but remember we're on the third Thursday of the month, 6 to 8 p.m. every month for COFMUG. So if you're looking to join us, just search the community site for COFMUG or find my Twitter account, or you can find us and you'll find the Zoom meeting invites for the meetings. So it's always fun to have a large, diverse group of people. And thanks very much to Cris for having for volunteering to run this presentation and taking it off of me, so I don't have to do more than one, because I'm doing mine next month.
It's 6:30.
Yeah. Yeah, the roadshow the roadshow experience is definitely pretty weird. From back in the day when the bills were going around to the different user groups presenting FileMaker. Bill Kaiser and Bill Heiser. So we've come a long way since then. And we actually had, from version 11 through 14 at COFMUG, we had those roadshow presentations in person. But now here we are, and virtualized and ready to go. So I think this video will probably wind up on our YouTube channel, just because I think it was a really good one. Probably won't have the chat log. Eric Wegweiser posted a very important question, even though we're over time. FileMaker Cloud 19 seems you can't download backups. I think he's talking about FileMaker Cloud 2.19, the next gen FileMaker Cloud. I'm not sure you can download backups in the new version. I didn't really do much with the beta of that. So I don't know if anybody else knows the answer to that question, but if not, I'll figure out the answer to that. I think Marshall gave me a to-do task for that, Eric, so I'll reach out to you later once I figure out that answer. I think their restore process, though, is you can just pick a backup in the new FileMaker Cloud and set it to restore, and it's like a one-click restore. They're trying to make it easier to drive it through the server interface. So, all right, that's all. We're well over time. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out, and we'll hopefully see you next month. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Go Packers.
Thank you.